Most people think intelligence is a gift. They imagine it means effortless success, quick understanding, and a life where everything just clicks into place. But psychology tells a very different story. Research consistently shows that high cognitive ability comes with a hidden cost that nobody warns you about. The same neural architecture that allows you to see patterns others miss, think 3 steps ahead, and understand complex systems almost intuitively, that same architecture can make everyday life feel unbearably heavy. If you've ever felt exhausted by your own thoughts, if you've ever wished you could just turn your brain off for a few hours, if you've ever looked at people who seem perfectly content with simple answers and wondered what that must feel like, this video is for you. What I'm about to share isn't motivation. It's not a pep talk. It's the neuroscience and psychology behind why your mind feels like a burden and why that burden might actually be proof of something rare. Here's the truth most people never hear. High intelligence isn't a superpower with no side effects. It's a cognitive operating system that processes more, notices more, and questions more than average, and that comes at a significant cost. The struggles I'm about to describe aren't signs that something is wrong with you. They're the predictable consequences of a mind that refuses to run on autopilot. And once you understand why these struggles exist, you'll stop fighting yourself and start working with the brain you actually have. The first struggle is chronic mental overstimulation. There's a concept in neuroscience called sensory gating, which is your brain's ability to filter out irrelevant information so you can focus on what matters. Most people have strong sensory gates. Background noise fades away automatically. Unimportant details get discarded without conscious effort. But highly intelligent brains often have reduced sensory gating. Your neural filters are set wider, which means more data gets through to conscious processing. In practice, this means you notice the flicker of fluorescent lights that everyone else ignores. You hear the conversation 3 tables away while trying to focus on your own. You register the micro-expression someone made when they said they were fine. This isn't anxiety, and it's not a disorder. It's the cost of running a high-resolution perceptual system. Your brain is taking in more information per second than most people process in a minute, and that's exhausting, not because you're weak, but because you're doing more cognitive work than anyone around you realizes. The second struggle is the curse of pattern recognition. Your brain is wired to detect patterns and connections between things that seem unrelated on the surface. This is genuinely useful for complex problem solving, strategic thinking, and creative work. But here's what nobody tells you. Pattern recognition doesn't have an off switch. You see the pattern in your friend's dating choices that predicts exactly how their new relationship will end. You notice the organizational dysfunction that will cause a project to fail 6 months from now. You recognize the subtle signs that someone's marriage is falling apart before they've admitted it to themselves. Psychologists call this predictive processing, and while it's a marker of high fluid intelligence, it's also a source of chronic frustration. You're constantly seeing outcomes that others won't recognize until it's too late, and you're unable to explain how you know without sounding paranoid or arrogant. The burden isn't being wrong, the burden is being right before anyone's ready to hear it. The third struggle is existential isolation. There's a phenomenon psychologists call existential isolation. The awareness that no matter how close you get to another person, your inner experience remains fundamentally separate from theirs. Most people experience this feeling occasionally. Highly intelligent people often experience it constantly. When you think about mortality, meaning, consciousness, or the nature of reality with genuine depth, you quickly discover that most conversations don't go there. Not because people are shallow, but because their brains aren't wired to sit comfortably with unresolved existential questions. So you learn to keep those thoughts private. You participate in surface-level discussions while an entirely different conversation runs in your head. And over time, you start to feel like you're living in a parallel world that overlaps with everyone else's, but never quite touches it. This isn't loneliness in the traditional sense. It's the quiet recognition that the depth of your inner world may never be fully witnessed by another person. The fourth struggle is analysis paralysis, rooted in cognitive complexity. Decision-making research shows something counterintuitive. People with higher intelligence often take longer to make decisions than those with average cognitive ability. This isn't indecisiveness, it's computational thoroughness. When you evaluate a choice, your brain automatically generates more variables, more contingencies, more second and third order consequences. You're not just asking, what should I do? You're modeling multiple future timelines and trying to optimize across all of them simultaneously. The person who decides quickly isn't necessarily more decisive. They're often just processing fewer dimensions of the problem. Your apparent hesitation is actually your brain doing more work, not less. But knowing this doesn't make it easier. You still have to live in a world that rewards fast action over careful analysis, and that mismatch between how you think and how you're expected to perform creates a friction that never fully goes away. The fifth struggle is social fatigue from cognitive masking. When you're in a social setting, you're not just participating in the conversation. You're running multiple parallel processes, monitoring your tone, calibrating to the group's intellectual level, deciding what to reveal and what to simplify, tracking how your words are being received in real time. Psychologists call this impression management, but for highly intelligent people, it goes deeper. You're often engaged in what might be called cognitive masking, deliberately dampening your natural thought patterns to avoid alienating others or dominating the conversation. This is why you can leave a perfectly pleasant social gathering feeling completely drained. You weren't just socializing, you were performing a continuous act of self-translation, converting your internal complexity into something socially digestible. And that's exhausting in a way that simple introversion or extroversion doesn't fully capture. The sixth struggle is the hedonic treadmill of achievement. There's a psychological concept called hedonic adaptation, the tendency for humans to return to a baseline level of satisfaction regardless of positive changes in their circumstances. For highly intelligent people, this adaptation often happens faster and more completely. You achieve something and the satisfaction evaporates almost immediately. Your brain has already moved on to the next problem, the next gap, the next imperfection. This isn't ingratitude, and it's not a failure to appreciate what you have. It's a cognitive system that's wired to perpetually seek, solve, and optimize. The result is a strange kind of emptiness that follows accomplishment. You did the thing, it should feel meaningful. But your brain has already filed it under solved and is scanning the horizon for the next challenge. You're not broken. You're just running software that doesn't have a celebrate and rest function built in. If what I'm describing sounds uncomfortably accurate, like I've somehow been narrating your internal experience, consider subscribing. This isn't about motivation or inspiration. It's about understanding the mind you actually have, not the one you're supposed to have. Hit subscribe if you want to keep understanding yourself better. The seventh struggle is difficulty tolerating intellectual boredom. Your brain requires a certain level of cognitive stimulation to function comfortably. When that threshold isn't met, you don't just feel bored, you feel almost physically uncomfortable. Neuroscience suggests this is related to baseline dopamine levels and the brain's reward system. Highly intelligent brains often have reward systems calibrated for complexity. Simple tasks don't generate enough neurochemical payoff to feel satisfying. This is why you might struggle with routine work, administrative tasks, or situations where you're forced to operate below your cognitive capacity. It's not a lack of discipline. It's a neurological mismatch between what the task offers and what your brain needs to feel engaged. And in a world where much of daily life involves repetitive, low-complexity activities, this mismatch becomes a constant source of friction. The eighth struggle is perfectionism as your default processing mode. True perfectionism isn't about wanting things to be perfect. It's about having a brain that automatically detects the gap between what is and what could be. When you look at your own work, you don't just see what you created. You see all the ways it falls short of the ideal version that exists in your head. This isn't insecurity, it's pattern recognition applied to your own output. Research connects this to what psychologists call high evaluative standards, paired with discrepancy awareness. Your brain is exceptionally good at seeing flaws, which is useful for improvement, but brutal for satisfaction. The struggle isn't producing good work. You probably produce excellent work by any external measure. The struggle is that your internal measure is calibrated to an impossible standard that keeps moving every time you get close. The ninth struggle is emotional intensity that gets misattributed as instability. There's a theory in psychology called Dabrowski's overexcitabilities, which suggests that gifted individuals often experience heightened emotional responses, not because they're emotionally unstable, but because their nervous systems are simply more responsive. You feel things more intensely, joy hits harder, sadness runs deeper, injustice provokes genuine anguish rather than mild discomfort. This isn't a disorder, it's the emotional counterpart to cognitive sensitivity. Just as your brain processes more intellectual information, your nervous system processes more emotional information. But in a culture that values emotional containment, this intensity often gets mislabeled as oversensitivity, drama, or instability. The truth is, you're not overreacting. You're experiencing reality at higher resolution than most people around you. The 10th struggle is the impostor paradox. Research consistently shows that imposter syndrome is more common among high achievers, not less. This seems counterintuitive. Shouldn't success reduce self-doubt? But here's the mechanism. Highly intelligent people are better at recognizing the limits of their knowledge. You know how much you don't know. You're aware of every gap, every assumption, every area where your understanding is incomplete. Meanwhile, less knowledgeable people often have fewer doubts because they lack the metacognitive awareness to recognize what they're missing. This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect in reverse. Your intelligence gives you the capacity to perceive your own limitations with painful clarity, and that clarity can feel like evidence of inadequacy rather than what it actually is, which is sophisticated self-awareness. The 11th struggle is chronic dissatisfaction with shallow interactions. Small talk isn't just boring for you, it feels almost physically uncomfortable. Your brain is wired for depth, for meaning, for conversations that actually go somewhere. Psychologically, this relates to what researchers call need for cognition, a measurable preference for engaging in effortful thinking. People high in need for cognition find shallow exchanges unsatisfying, not because they're antisocial, but because their brains are literally seeking more nutritious cognitive input. This can create real social difficulties. Most human interaction operates at the shallow end. Building relationships requires participating in the mundane before you reach the meaningful. And for a brain that craves depth, those early stages feel like cognitive starvation. You're not antisocial, you're selectively social, and that selection requires a patience your brain finds difficult to generate. The 12th and final struggle is the weight of seeing what others don't. Perhaps the heaviest burden of high intelligence is this. You see problems others don't see, solutions others won't accept, and futures others aren't prepared for. You notice the systemic dysfunction. You understand the long-term consequences. You see the path from here to disaster and the path that could prevent it. But intelligence doesn't come with authority. Seeing clearly doesn't mean others will listen. And so you carry a kind of knowledge that often feels more like a weight than a gift. Cassandra from Greek mythology was cursed to see the future while being disbelieved. For many highly intelligent people, daily life feels like a milder version of that curse, understanding what's coming while being unable to change it. So here's the truth nobody tells you. High intelligence isn't a gift you unwrap and enjoy. It's a different cognitive architecture that comes with capabilities and costs. The struggles I've described today aren't signs that you're broken, that you need fixing, or that something went wrong. They're the predictable consequences of a mind that processes more, notices more, and questions more than it was ever designed to handle in a world built for average. You're not too sensitive. You're not overthinking. You're not difficult. You're running high-performance cognitive software in an environment that doesn't provide the right inputs. And you've been trying to troubleshoot yourself instead of understanding your own operating system. Subscribe if this helped you see yourself differently. Understanding your mind isn't just interesting, it changes how you live in it. I'll see you in the next one. Which of these 12 struggles hit the hardest for you? Drop a number in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious which of these resonates most.